struggle is true. All my people stand firm, and I will stand with you. Struggle is real.
Aloha and welcome to the Defeating Camp podcast. I'm Andy Bestwick, founder of the Can brand. It's definitely been a while since I put together an interview, but today's episode will probably give some context. On today's podcast, I welcome Jason Carnegie, and we're going to be discussing wellness coaching. I know, sounds like a bunch of bullshit. But after doing a little research and definitely knowing Jason, I wanted to give it a shot. And I'm here to share my experience with the Can fam. First, let me give some context as to why. Back in my college days of running, I had an incredible coach named Gary Sievers. As coaches do, they put together inspirational quotes before the season and usually end up putting it on the back of your shirt. There was one that particularly stuck with me over time. The quote goes something like this: "The will to win is important, but the will to prepare is vital." I thought of this recently on a training ride. Just as endorphins were starting to flow and the flow state was kicking in for me, something I hadn't experienced in quite some time. I wasn't reflecting so much on winning or the will to win, but rather simply on just the will or interest and energy to engage in life. At the moment, it wasn't a battle between can and can't for me, but between interest and disinterest, which I'll admit was a little bit alarming. In life, you have setbacks that are inevitable. Sometimes you'll find yourself in the basement of that mental state and wonder if you ever find the staircase, let alone the will to climb out. A few months ago, I found myself in a pretty critical state. I knew I was struggling, but I didn't fully understand why or what was happening. Maybe it was the weight of change, losing a loved one, or just navigating all of life's resets. But what I do know is I'm lucky enough to have people around me who recognized I was struggling. They stood by me with patience and they helped me rediscover the will I needed to engage. If you ever find yourself in a depressed state, stalled out physically or emotionally, know this: you're not alone. It's the shared human experience we all have to go through. You're allowed to struggle. You're just not allowed to give up. The answers are out there just as they were for me in reclaiming my physical and mental health. Today's podcast is about embracing a newfound or rediscovered willingness to engage. This is the kind of will that separates us from primates, the will of self-discipline, the magical creative will to seek purpose, and even the will to win. So the questions for me, and still are to a degree, are what do you do with that newfound will? The kind of will that wakes you up in the morning with that hope and possibility of what's next in life. As one of Hawaii's greatest citizens, Barack Obama, once said, "Hope is not a plan." So when you find that hopeful desire, you need a plan. And just as I was finding the stairs to climb out of that basement, an incredible person entered the picture. All right, today we've got Jason Carnegie on, and super excited to have him on. He's coach to me now, but I'll get into that a little bit. I want to explain a little bit of background on how I know Jason and what we're going to be digging into a little bit today. Jason's on Kauai and lives on Kauai, and I actually never met Jason in person, sadly. Well, in passing, I think I was riding.
Just a little bit, yeah. Well,
Okay.
twice in passing, yes.
If you don't know him and you're not on Kauai, he is a very high-level fitness trainer and an expert. And if you've seen any of his photography or social media or anything like that, he's incredibly physically fit and basically a fitness model.
I appreciate the compliment. I'll take it.
True.
I won't say anymore. I appreciate
All
it.
true. So besides being the epitome of physically fit and all the coaching stuff, not too long ago, he reached out to me. And so I've been on the mainland, as some of you know, for over a year, came back to take care of dad, and just big life change for me. And he reached out and told me that he was going to be changing some things in his life in terms of pursuing wellness coaching. So as soon as I heard wellness coaching, I thought, okay, red flag, right? Because I'm that guy. I don't want anyone to know about my ADHD issues and dig into my mind. And I'm a little skeptical of that whole genre of coaching, we'll call it. So I did a little research first on Jason, as you know, human nature requires. So first thing I did is Google Jason, and what comes up, he literally is a doctor in cell and molecular biology from probably one of the greatest institutions, medical schools on the planet, University of Pennsylvania. So just says a lot about his background and everything that he's done in his journey to be a professional and to be very well educated and very scientific. So in my thinking, when he approached me to do this, which I will say I'm very grateful now, and you have been coaching me as a test case.
Truth.
I am very thankful. And so we want to dig into that today because I went from being a skeptic of even taking it on to experiencing it, and now even a willingness to share and talk about my journey and how it's helped me, and maybe how this kind of stuff can help others, whether it be little tidbits of information or full on coaching program with someone like yourself. And so who goes from getting a PhD in cell and molecular biology to all of a sudden, I want to be a fitness coach?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just, that journey is fascinating to me. So maybe we could start there.
Yeah, it's well, first of all, thank you for having me on. This conversation right here, this platform's opportunity is something that I am grateful for. I'm grateful for you as well, Andy, just as a person, a human being, and a client. But this is a sort of conversation here that, makes me come alive. I am a natural introvert, but the sort of introvert that enjoys conversation. So that's one piece of the answer to the question of, who on earth goes from, you know, the world of biomedical research into fitness lifestyle training into health and well-being coaching, and the answer is this guy, right? I guess the question is, how did I get there? And depending on how much time we have today, it can be a shorter or a longer answer. But in a nutshell, my passion has always been the life sciences, whether I fully consciously recognized it or not. Throughout high school, yes, science, love science. In Jamaica, unfortunately, which is where I grew up, the avenues, the opportunities presented, the information that comes at most kids is, if you want to go further in life, you need to choose a profession, right? You have some options. You're going to be an attorney, you're going to be a doctor, like a physician, or maybe you're going to be an engineer. If you're not going to be doing any of those three things, you're not going anywhere in life, right? Maybe a teacher. And so, as someone who was passionate about science, I thought, okay, I'm going to be an engineer. Good. Long story short, I did not go into engineering. I went into the biomedical sciences. While there at the University of the West Indies in Jamaica, I was really mentored by and inspired by one of my professors. Long story short, it led me to wanting more, right? Biotechnology, molecular biology, genetics, all these things completely fascinating to me. And I wanted more. So the more became, well, I'm going to get a PhD. I literally do not know how, especially as a kid from Jamaica. I don't have money to pay any of these universities.
I can only imagine. So
It's just
scholarship,
like,
hopefully, right?
exactly. Like, I mean, not hopefully. That was the only possibility, and I knew it.
And not
So I
the
won't
route
bore
of
you.
my favorite athlete of all time and track star Usain Bolt. It was it was a different avenue, right?
Yeah, different avenue. Like, I can't run. Do not ask me to run. I don't enjoy it, and I'm slow. And otherwise, a terrible Jamaican. I'm not
Yeah,
laid back, and that's just not me.
not fast on the
Um,
track and not laid back.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you
So
got
where am
some
I?
work to do. Okay.
Yeah, where am I? So PhD land. That was where that's where I was heading. I didn't know how. A scholarship was the only way. All right. Without the details, miraculously, magically worked for it, got a fully paid scholarship essentially to the PhD program at the University of Pennsylvania, which, by the way, is as in a similar way to other PhD programs in biomedical science, is fully funded. All right. So went to UPenn, maybe about halfway through the world of getting a PhD. I knew I was not going to be a research scientist forever. I was not going to be in academia. I loved it, but there were circumstances and hurdles around the way research science is done in the United States as well as globally that involve processes I did not want to engage in. And we won't go into what those are, but it's basically the fight for research dollars.
Right.
And sort of serendipitously, in this phase of exploration of, okay, well, what's next if it's not research science? Teaching as a lecturer back home at university in Jamaica was an option, and an option I pursued. But quite by accident or serendipity or synchronicity or whatever your personal belief is on those sorts of things happening out of nowhere, I came across a company in a field I knew nothing about, medical education aligned with pharmaceutical marketing. you might as well have spoken that to me in Greek because I had no clue what that was. I learned about it, interviewed with people, and I was like, this sounds awesome. I'm going to, take my scientific knowledge, I'm going to apply it to, pharmaceutical drugs that are directly benefiting patients. This is exactly where I want to be.
Right.
Let's just pile on, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10, however many years it was in that field, sort of as a consultant, a scientific director, thinking about clinical science, basic science all day long. Suddenly I was like, this really isn't exactly what I thought it was going to be, right? The translation of what we're doing to the end person, the patient getting the benefit, that was a long road. You can imagine for any pharmaceutical drug, the road from conception to patient, it's a long one, right?
Sure, sure.
And I was thinking, well, how can I circumvent that longer bridge to direct impact? I have been in a space where I've been physically active since my late teens. Again, I don't run, but discovered the gym. And I mean, come on, who doesn't love lifting? And so the universe started to speak to me in different ways. There were a lot of questions coming from people. Are you a personal trainer? Are you a coach? Are you this? And at the time, I had hired my first coach and maybe, well, I'd say first coach, someone who was, very knowledgeable and skilled, if you will, at helping people to implement physical changes. He was like, why aren't you a personal trainer? I was like, okay, enough. I hear you, universe. Enough
Right,
of the,
right. So it
with the
starts
prompts
out
and the
with
questions.
people around you
Yeah,
noticing a scientific approach, and you're probably the guy with the notepad in the gym,
absolutely. The guy with
a key
multiple notebooks in
indicator
the gym.
of a gym nerd that probably knows what they're doing, actually, not
Right.
just a freestyle. So the universe speaks to you, and you just take the leap. You just decide that's where I'm supposed to be and what I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be doing at the time.
It wasn't quite, it sounds, in retrospect,
Yeah,
leap. At the time,
yeah.
baby steps,
It always
right? It was
is.
like,
Yeah,
okay, I'm gonna study to become a personal trainer, but I'm not gonna leave my day job. By
right.
this time, I'm here on Kauai, but I'm still working full time in medical education, pharma, and then sort of gradually transitioning. Okay, now I'm part time in that world, and I'm part time in the personal training world. So then just ripping the band-aid off and be like, okay, it's go time. And I haven't looked back since. I didn't foresee the pandemic. That wasn't on my radar. I mean, I don't know if it was on yours, but I am not Nostradamus. I didn't see that coming. But I will say I was transitioning months before toward less in-person stuff and more remote training stuff. And so the pandemic hit and I was
Oh,
like,
that's
oh, okay,
phenomenal. So
well,
you had already kind of dabbled in that and understood what was required to have a
yeah.
relationship. Because I honestly hadn't even thought too much about a trainer being virtual.
I tell you what, even initially as a PT in person, what was really interesting to me, looking outside of myself as a client
Mhm.
and as a coach, looking at my clients and thinking, wow, there is a lot more than time spent with someone in the gym that contributes to the overall trajectory and rate of progress that they make, right? And it's okay, so what are those factors? What are those conversations that are important to bring a certain level of realization to someone and to help them to see the value of making change in other areas of their lives apart from the physical stuff that we're doing. And so conversations naturally started to shift towards other things that are going on and recognizing the interconnectedness of different things. So helping clients to track other variables that maybe they're not even thinking about on a day-to-day basis, like what's their energy like? How have they been sleeping? What's their level of motivation like? Are they staying hydrated? So additional things that people wouldn't necessarily think about as contributing to or taking away from.
The key ingredients to pursuing a higher level of fitness are always going to be those outside contributors. So
Yeah,
I could
yeah,
see how that would creep in and probably even be frustrating because you're not influencing those aspects of their lives. Honestly, like an awesome segue to how this evolved into wellness
yeah,
coaching. And
sure.
as I've gotten to know you, and we'll touch on the different considerations of what wellness coaching is, but I was always fearful of someone going to come in and make assumptions about who I am and what I'm about and what I should be doing. Finding a can mindset, I always aligned it with a Maslow concept of how do you meet your basic needs, and so that was always something that I had considered in terms of myself in order to kind of get to some level I needed to be at. So take me through
Yeah.
how that evolved before you even explored becoming a coach. Did you see it that way, that it could be scientific, or how did that go?
So if we go to the before, becoming a personal trainer, the answer is no,
Okay.
right? Along the way, helping people to take a look at other aspects of their lives, it became like a reflective mirror to me to see that the underlying currency or the underlying factor that's encompassing all of it is the psychology, the willingness to engage in a change process. And it became this sort of thing where my conversations with clients sometimes really didn't even touch on did you lift 5 pounds or 5,000 pounds. It didn't even necessarily always go there. It was trying to understand and peel back some layers to see what else was there, right? What's interesting, and I'm guilty of this. Most people tend to listen or hear the word coach and a couple potentially different things pop into mind. One, it could be like somebody just yelling at them, do 10 more, right?
I ran track and cross country in college, and I had a phenomenal coach, and I loved him, but I just remember him yelling, "Pull your head out."
Yeah,
There is that kind of coaching that's out there, sure.
100%. And I mean, that's a very prescriptive approach. And then, other people will come to me and they assume that I'm a wizard. I just like say, yeah, presto, changeo, boom. 30 pounds of fat gone, 20 pounds of muscle. You're
Right.
jacked. You're a superhero, right?
Yep.
And the truth is, I'm none of those. The world of coaching, sort of as predicated on psychology and coaching psychology, is helping to bring people or shine a light in the direction that they want to go so that they can sort of not only decide what step or steps they want to take and in what order, but recognizing that they have both the ability and the strength to take those steps. And so it sort of becomes a catalytic relationship, a catalytic process where people have the opportunity now to go further, but also go faster than they would, knowing that it is all based on whatever their unique strengths and values and circumstances might be. When you start to think of how do people address being more, doing more, thinking of more, but really from the position of more, like from that place where they want to be. Maslow's pyramid or hierarchy comes into it. Most people aren't going to be too worried about being more if they're worried about, am I going to make it through the day? You
Right.
know?
And yeah, and that has always been my philosophy, is that if you don't find that baseline in those key categories, then
Yeah,
the pursuit of that greatness is not possible.
right.
And I'll just say that's the baseline that you helped me find, as I was kind of telling my story of kind of struggling just to have like that willingness again to even want some greatness, to
Hmm.
pursue something. And that's probably also a great way to describe the difference in mental health and coaching wellness. Whereas that's not where you find yourself. Am I right? I mean, you might in an initial engagement with a prospective client, but you might say, "Hey, look, I'm not your step you're on right now."
Right.
How would you kind of address that in terms of the divide there?
Yeah, it's a really good question because, and this is going to tie in, from Maslow to other founding fathers of what's called positive psychology. But, if someone came to me in an initial conversation and it was clear from that conversation that, there is potentially an underlying disorder that I am not certified or qualified to, number one, diagnose nor treat, then that's a conversation of you might want to consider a mental health professional,
Sure.
right? That doesn't mean that as a coach, I don't allow for the sharing of quote unquote negative emotion, right? Because that's important. That's a whole person coming to me to have a conversation. And unless there's a sort of direct need to refer because there's an underlying issue that I cannot dive into with them, then it becomes okay, I understand where you're coming from. What if? what could.
Yeah.
Trying to ask them, well, what might be better than this that you can envision for yourself? And the minute someone switches their mindset to, away from what's wrong to what's going well and what could be even better, that subtle shift alone in their subconscious changes the way that they engage with heading forward.
I like kind of how you're describing that. And as I'm thinking through it, the background of that would probably be a constant willingness to try to overcome the can't mindset, right? And so I think the coaching aspect of what I've seen so far is that you're approaching it from more of a can mindset, not to overbrand this concept, but
Go for it. I mean, it's a powerful word.
Yeah. And
with
buy
a
a
period.
hat. No.
Yeah, by the way, it's a merch.
No, well, I was thinking through it and we hadn't even discussed it in a formula like this, but the way you approach it with me is, and kind of akin to mental health, is that you're seeing a normal behavior of negativity and quickly addressing it, like as we're having a discussion. No, we're not talking about what you weren't able to do in that, what do you call it, a test or a trial?
Yeah, so
what
so
are the assignments that you would help me come up with?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so that was, I kind of appreciated that approach. And it's hard to do for most people because you kind of want to enjoy withering in a little bit of pain and suffering. And, in our hour of discussion, it's more about, all right, what went well? We're not interested in what didn't go well. And that's been a neat approach. And I'd like to hear how, if you arrived at that on your own, or if that was part of your own coaching and training.
Yeah. So it's a great question. There are a couple nuances to it. Number one, yes, helping someone to sort of do that 180-degree shift. We are all human, so it's not to you or anyone else in any particular situation. It's unique, it's common to humans, right? To sort of more hyper focus on what's going wrong or didn't go well or the way we wanted it to. Negative emotions tend to be really sticky and the positive ones pretty fleeting. So it's the initial reminder, if you will, to, well, what went well, right? Not ignoring the challenges, but taking a look at the challenges through the lens of, but however, you did this. And that changes your perspective of how weighty that negative or that missed experience was, and helps you to identify a path forward should a similar circumstance or obstacle present in the future. The short answer about, if it's something that I had necessarily focused on prior to training as a health and well-being coach, the answer is no. The mindset that is more common, and I am 1,000% guilty as a practitioner, but in personal training is, okay, what's not going what's the thing I need to try to fix here?
Right.
All right. And the lens of coaching is less of fault finding, problem fixing, and more of, well, possibility focus, solution orientation, which is, yes, scientific, based on Seligman's sort of interest in the 1990s. And he was, or still is, he's alive, sort of a world-renowned psychiatrist who not necessarily coined the term of positive psychology, but really pioneered the direction of, we've focused for so long on diagnosing illnesses and identifying the pathology behind things that are going wrong. And we are not spending any time taking a look at, well, what makes people thrive? Because that's probably going to be, number one, relevant to those who are ill. But then if you look at the population of the world, en masse, there are far more people who are not ill, doing quote unquote well, but are wanting more, wanting to do better. And why not focus some attention there?
Which, that's where the coaching thing comes in, right? Is a self-help book and other things are phenomenal, but it does take a back and forth of what you're personally dealing with. It's kind of nice to talk to you, and I never really do that. You don't want to drive your significant other nuts with these ideations and, just sorting it out. So I all of those things I think have been a phenomenal experience for me, and an important things for people to consider when they need this kind of thing.
Yeah, you're hitting so many really critical points, like right in the bullseye. And let's start at the end, sort of end of what you just said. I think so many people, and will throw us under the bus, guys in particular, right?
Yeah.
Not only don't we necessarily have people to have that sort of conversation with,
Yeah.
but we're usually not exactly willing to either. It's sort of, I got this, I'm gonna man up, I'm gonna get shit done. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I totally
Stuff
was
done.
there. Yeah, I wasn't interested, but I'm like, man, anyways, yeah,
And
I agree with
it's
that.
the lens of, I use the word more, not in terms of materialism, but more in terms of what could be. What are the additional possibilities for me to do better, to be better, to contribute more in whatever ways that might look like for any particular person? It's going to be unique to that person. That's for me, that's the power of coaching, right? To allow yourself just for a minute, the idea that a conversation with someone from a different perspective, not looking for your flaws, but helping you to look for your strengths and what it is you actually want, and then create your own pathway to get there. Yes, without saying, by the way, Andy, there's a giant pothole 2 minutes down the street. You might want to avoid it. I mean, you can go in it if you want, but it's going to ruin your wheel, but you can. I'm just letting you
Yeah,
know it's there, right?
yeah.
And so sort of flipping the script from the I got to get through this on my own because, let's just call it macho pride, whatever you want to call it. It's
It's
real,
like
100% real.
you
Yeah.
almost like own it as a badge of honor that you're going to figure it out.
Yeah. If
And
I fight harder, if I spend more time, if I whatever,
yeah,
then and the answer is yes, you probably will. The
yeah,
flip side, there's kind of a hack that you're you're
yeah,
you're like blinders on trying to pretend isn't there. People aren't aware. They think, okay,
yeah.
there's something that I'm missing that I'm wanting, and geez, I think the
No, you
solution is
nailed it.
therapy. I don't want to go to therapy.
And you're going to look for the path of least resistance to
For
solve the
sure.
problem.
It's a
Not
slower
saying
path forward, and it's a confusing, frustrating journey.
in summary on that point, it's a valuable exercise and it's been a valuable opportunity for me to go down this road with you. And I was lucky enough to have you, introduce this to me.
Brilliant.
Let's dig into the certifications a little bit because
Yeah, sure.
I want all of them because you have a ton.
We're, we are not going to go through all of them.
All right,
Um,
well, let's do the training and the wellness. The most recent one you got is talk about what
yeah,
that cert is.
sure, sure. And this is sort of where the spirit of coaching really shines through, right? And sort of the missing link between everything that I have been doing to this point
Mhm.
and literally this
Yeah.
point, which is, you can start to think about, well, we started off this conversation with, well, how on earth did I, sort of get here? And the reality is everything that I've done from, scientific research to communications to strategy, to personal training to now coaching to, way back in the day as a high school tutor, sort of comes together in a way that is valuable to me and, really just sort of spotlights what I'm here to do, right? Big statement, but true. In terms of the process of becoming a health and well-being coach, for me, that looked like about 8 months, 9 months. I can't even quite remember. Um, a lot of self-study, or many, many weeks of, classes online, live, live attendance at classes online, a lot of practical exams, a lot of working with clients sort of pro bono like yourself to sort of, put in the hours, get in the reps. The only way to become better at something is to do the thing. And the more times you do the thing, the more, number one, feedback you have, experience you have under your belt. And that experience translates into doing things differently and better.
I think that speaks to the level of the industry. What's the governing body again?
Yeah, so the next step for me is the National Board of Health and Wellbeing Coaching. And so that's sort of the next step that I'm taking a couple of months from now. I'm just going to leave it as a cliffhanger suspense. I won't say anything more.
Okay.
But that's the national professional body. There is also the International Coaching Federation, which is again a different step, but in a similar direction, just from an international perspective. So that's going to be happening in the future as well. But then sort of the how I got here stuff is, yes, personal trainer, fitness nutrition specialist,
Right.
precision nutrition coach, weight loss specialist, those sorts of things that get you more education, but also more experience, more awareness. That's been my path to understanding sort of what's more. And part of that is multiple coaches and mentors as well along the way. Because I can't say, oh yeah, I just woke up one morning and just like did all this stuff. I mean, I'm still a human with, doubts and fears and concerns and negative what ifs, but so much of that has changed along the way, the past 10 years to where I'm, right now.
You bring a maturity to the game for sure. And I don't know if that's just everything you've been through. For the audience, I'm not going to lie, the Jamaican accent's pretty solid. Just makes you feel a little calmer starting out.
I work on it. I practice.
You do. Yeah, of
No,
course.
I do not.
But I think that that's such an important piece of it is I will say the discipline that you have in the craft. It's going to sound cheesy or weird, but you could trend towards allowing your client to take you down a road of negativity or off basis of what the discussion is supposed to be about, but you always have a great way of bringing it back to the positive and what we're supposed to be talking about and what we're trying to accomplish. Even if I'm not totally prepared, you find a way into my brain with that question piece. I think is huge in this kind of coaching is the Q&A process that you take the client through. I think is key because you won't allow for the call to end or the conversation to end without finding a string to pull on. So what are you looking for in clients? What is an ideal client either for this type of thing, or maybe we could say even specifically to you as a coach?
Right. That's a really loaded question.
Okay.
That's
my job.
No, well done. So what you did is you posed a thought-provoking questions. That's a very powerful coaching tool. So I'm going to give you an honorary certification right here. Boom. Right? Because any question that causes somebody to just pause and be like, we think about that. That's a super valuable question because that's going to bring the person further along the road. So well done.
All right. Nailed it.
Who am I looking for when I think about clients? The first and most important thing is willingness to engage in coaching, right? And I mentioned earlier that most people, and this is partially, social challenge, partially, manifestation of social media and the explosion of what I'm just going to call big fitness, influencer fitness, whatever you want to term it, right? Most people come at the idea of coaching from drill sergeant, therapist, wizard, right? I'm none of those things, but I'm sort of all of those things at the same time.
Like wizard.
I mean, doesn't everybody want a wizard? It was like snap your finger, boom, something good has happened.
I thought that's what was happening. But...
Oh yeah, I just say, hey, Andy, you do nothing, right? But the difference is you come to the process and you come to our sessions open and ready to experience coaching.
Sure.
And if someone is there in that space in their life where there is room for introspection and exploration of possibility, then that's where I like to meet people.
Well, and that's in, kind of my intro to my experience with you is that and I saw it as just like a will, and there's times in life where you won't really have it, which is a different discussion you have to have with yourself and with others. But if you have a hint of stoke or interest or something bigger you want out of life, which is really what, for me, the Can brand's all about, and why I like being connected to you is sort of the whole brand's always just been a nudge forward. It's all it really should do. It's a word on a t-shirt or a hat, but it's there to just remind you that there is a positive possibility or a hopefulness.
Wellness coaching is just sort of a minor piece of nomenclature. I mean, what underlies
Right.
wellness coaching is what underlies all forms of coaching, right? It's tapping into positivity, values.
Sure.
How do we get from here to where you want to be, right? And when I think about, well, who do I want to work with? Yes, somebody who is willing to engage in that coaching process. But I also think about people like myself, where I used to be. I wanted more, but that was like physical. I wanted to be better, right? I
Sure.
was like, why can't I accomplish this? And the answer is, I spend a lot of time thinking, I'm a smart guy. I can read, I can comprehend, I can implement what, I mean, obviously I can do this on my own, obviously, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I would have figured it all out. But if I didn't have the experience of just being like, okay, I'm just going to put this, I'm going to do this by myself vibe mentality over here in a box just for a minute, just for a test, I'm going to hire a coach. I'm going to see what happens, right?
Yeah.
The rest is history. And I mean, I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
I make this statement boldly as a blanket one. Every single one of us can benefit from coaching, and coaches need and benefit from other coaches as well. So it's not as if, oh, if you are anyone but a coach, you need a coach. No, if you're a
Yeah.
coach, you need a coach.
No
You need a
one's doing it
mentor. You
alone.
need people to learn from. Like
Yeah.
this is human nature. Nobody is born knowing everything, and try as you might, you will never know everything.
It is really hard doing it by yourself. What would you say the steps that are out there for people? So, any quick tips or anything you would offer?
Um, Anything that helps you to understand your behavior a little bit better than you do now is going to be important.
Right.
It's also a brave step to understand that your conscious mind half the time isn't driving the bus, right?
Yeah.
When you come to that realization, it's kind of a little bit difficult to accept. Anything out there that is focused on behavior change, focused on understanding emotion, focused on positive psychology in a very general sense is going to be beneficial. Other tools out there, I mean, everyone, no matter if they're a professional coach or not, if you're in that space, number one, you're there because you enjoy helping people. Most people in the space are there because they enjoy helping people,
Yeah.
right? So reach out to somebody who you resonate with and who you feel might be able to help nudge you forward. It doesn't have to be sort of, oh, I'm going to pay you $10. You're going to tell me, 10 tips. No, it's like, hey, I'm Jason. I'm curious about blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Somebody is going to respond and,
Yeah.
make their best effort to nudge you forward, right?
Yep.
Not a lot is going to happen at all unless you do something, which is sort of, again, sort of the kernel of coaching. Like there has to be a willingness to engage. If you are looking for someone or something to magically make the change, you're looking in the wrong direction, right? You're still looking at what's wrong rather than what's possible.
So I just wanted just to kind of, summarize my experience. Just been super positive, and I'm really grateful for it. And I hope people can take the opportunity to explore, the coaching world. And the takeaways I've had, it's what have we been working together for about 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and
In that zone.
yeah, I'm super grateful for it. I have seen change. I jokingly was going to do a before and after, but it would have looked nothing like Jason, so you guys would have been upset.
Wow,
Also,
guys. I think you probably still have the before and afters, and you're just saying you're not willing to publish them. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna just leave it there. Bold accusation.
The before is out there, but I don't. Is there anything else you've got, Jason? Should we cover anything else?
Yeah. The one thing I want to sort of expand a little bit on is the point you just made, where I haven't been prescriptive at all with exercise. What we've done, based on where we started and how you envisioned sort of your better/best self and how that's continuing to evolve, initially the things which you were interested in were sort of just the foundational things as it relates to exercise and performance and nutrition and building sort of that baseline of habitual action. In other cases, because everything is based on the individual that I'm, having a chat with.
Right.
If someone comes in and they have sort of a lot of that baseline foundational stuff already built in and wired, they're looking at when they think of their goals is something a little bit more concrete, then okay, yes, we can start to talk about prescriptive exercise, but I'm always going to invite the person as well to give me input as to, well, what do you see yourself doing? Right? Because if somebody tells me, I think I'll go to the gym twice a week, well, okay, I'm not gonna like start to push you towards 5 times. I'll be like, okay, 2 times let's experiment with that for a while. Knowing within myself that really the exposure to that exercise, that stimulus that is going to help you to get where you want to go is going to be at least 3 times.
Yeah. Get the
Immediately
pattern
there's
going.
resistance.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that's exactly it. That was for me the formula in terms of not being consistent, almost not finding those endorphins on a regular basis. And from those experiences, you just find we'll just call it the joy of training again. We've been talking about physical stuff a lot, but the greatest thing for me has also been organizationally. I'll just say, some of like the vision statement that I came up with was focused on being more organized and successful and overcoming some of the catastrophizing that I'm super good at. See, I said that
because you're a human, right?
I was positive about that. And I think those are having those commitments has been key in the experience I've had. And also just, literally it gave me a foundation to leap off of and do more. So I just want to thank you again, Jason. Could you speak to a little bit of how people can get in touch with you? Do you want anyone to get in touch with you?
Please don't contact me, anyone in the world. No, thank you. No. First of all, I would love to hear from literally anybody that has listened to this. With whatever feedback, it's guaranteed it's going to be interesting to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be 1, it could be 5, it could be 5 million. You know what? The sky is the limit. It's going to be out there. So number one, I'm happy, please reach out with any comments, questions, thoughts that you have. I'm happy to be a sounding board for anybody out there. How do you get in touch with me? The easiest way probably is on social media. So just, type my name into the search box in LinkedIn. I'm there. Look me up on Instagram, Jason Carnegie _IF. The IF stands for Inspired Fitness, but it also stands for What If. There you go. It's on the pocket right there. The spelling of the last name can be tricky. So Jason Carnegie, JASONCARNEGIE _IF. That's me at Instagram.
So again, Jason, thanks for everything. And thanks for being supportive of me in terms of not only the kind of the personal journey stuff, but the Can brand and what all I'm trying to do with that and contributing towards that is huge for me because I love all this stuff. It meets the vision statement to defeat cans and pursue their own cans. So we will chat again, and depending on if anybody downloads this and they're stoked, we might come back and chat about something else. I don't know.
Number one, I guarantee there's going to be somebody out there that's stoked. So we're going to do this again. Okay. Number two, I appreciate you not only as a friend and a client, but for having me on this very important, impactful podcast.
Got it.
I know we'll be looking back at this and be like, wow, look at that episode. But yes, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll dig into other podcasts with tons of other fun topics as well.
That sounds awesome.
All right. Take care.
Struggle is true. All my people stand firm, and I will stand with you. Struggle is real.